Good evening, my delightful things. Welcome back, or welcome to the Cavern of Secrets. I'm Cassie, Kasara, the host of the channel, and this month we're covering killer couples. Tonight's case occurred in 2017 in Wilbur, Nebraska. There is a trigger warning before I begin for those who may need it. This case delves into self-harm, abuse, torture, dismemberment, murder, and drug use. So, viewer discretion is advised. I don't typically get into the grisly details because sometimes it's a little too much even for me. But I'm just letting y'all know. 24-year-old Sydney Loof, her picture is behind me, took to Tinder where she began messaging a woman who went by the name Audrey. They made a date once before and were planning to meet up again the night of November 15th. The morning of November 16th, 2017, Sydney didn't show up for her work shift, which caused her coworkers to become concerned. Normally, she was dependable, so this wasn't like her at all. When Sydney didn't answer her phone or messages from her family or friends, they contacted the Lincoln, Nebraska police. The police went to her home, but nothing seemed out of place and there wasn't any sign of struggle, which led them to look at her digital records. The last thing she posted online was a selfie with the caption, "Ready for my date," end quotes. Upon further investigation, the police found the Tinder messages between Audrey and Sydney. Soon the FBI became involved and they obtained more of Sydney's cell phone data, which showed that her phone had been last pinged roughly 40 miles south of Lincoln in a small town called Wilbur. Specifically an apartment of a couple named Bailey Boswell, aged 23, and Aubrey Trail, aged 51. Boswell and Trail had an extensive criminal background, theft, scams, and bad checks, mostly targeting antique businesses across multiple states, but nothing violent. The police went to Boswell and Trail's apartment to question them, but the couple were nowhere to be found. The landlord, however, did provide some information regarding the apartment smelling strongly of bleach, which is how the police obtained a search warrant. Once inside the apartment, the smell of bleach was still overpowering. One room in particular was meticulously cleaned, and the walls were scrubbed while the rest of the apartment was cluttered and dirty. It also appeared that the couple had left in a hurry. They also found some alarming items: duct tape, zip ties, a hatchet, a dog leash when the couple didn't own a dog, a sauna suit with a crotch cutout, a book on anatomy, and a plastic drop cloth smeared with blood. Fearing the worst, the police began searching the rural areas, including ponds in and around Wilbur. Eventually, videos of Bailey Boswell and Aubrey Trail started surfacing on social media, thanks in part to Sydney's parents who continued speaking with the media, hoping to keep their daughter's case in the public eye. In the videos, Trail and Boswell protested their innocence. Bailey Boswell wore an all-black hoodie with large sunglasses, claiming she had smoked pot and done other drugs with Sydney on their date, but then dropped her off at a friend's house afterwards. Trail, on the other hand, had his face fully visible, admitted to being a thief, but swore he was no murderer. They claimed they were not running or hiding, but couldn't go home because the local media had turned everyone against them. Police were able to track the couple's movements across several states through the cell phone data acquired through a subpoena. Through the data, they saw that the couple ended up in Branson, Missouri, which allowed the police to arrest them on a previous warrant for stealing several gold coins, then transporting them across state lines. With the couple in custody, the case could finally move forward. Boswell's cell phone data did more than just reveal where the couple was. It also revealed where Sydney was reported missing. Bailey Boswell had driven roughly 200 miles on various dirt roads in rural Clay County, Nebraska. When the investigators followed the digital trail, they soon found a ditch beside an isolated dirt road where investigators noticed a human arm sticking out of a garbage bag. Upon further investigation, they found more human remains in 13 separate garbage bags all around the road. I should say roads, because there was multiple. Boswell's phone had pinged from. The remains were identified as Sydney Loof's by her distinctive tattoos. Unfortunately, not all of her remains were recovered. Her left upper arm and internal organs were never found. However, investigators did find a latex glove smeared with blood with some of the remains. The autopsy revealed Sydney was suffocated and fought back against her attacker. Aubrey Trail immediately confessed. He told police that Sydney and two other women that weren't Boswell engaged in some consensual sex that the women paid $15,000 to film. Aubrey claimed that during the act, he strangled Sydney as an erotic act that got out of hand and he accidentally killed her. In his panic state, he dismembered the body and hid it so as not to get caught. He was adamant that Bailey Boswell was not involved in any way with Sydney's death and that she only assisted with the disposal of the body. However, the story of how Sydney died being an accident didn't line up with the evidence acquired. There were the text messages between Sydney and Bailey Boswell. None of those messages mentioned Aubrey Trail or any man, which would have led Sydney to believe that the date would have been between just her and Bailey. Investigators also said there was no evidence of anyone other than Sydney, Aubrey, and Bailey being in the apartment at this time of Sydney's murder. The most damning evidence of all was the surveillance footage from the local Home Depot that showed Aubrey Trail and Bailey Boswell just hours before the date purchasing a hacksaw, tin snips, a utility knife, and plastic drop cloths. The couple was extradited back to Nebraska, where each of them was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and improper disposal of human remains. Aubrey Trail pled guilty to improper disposal of human remains, but not guilty to the other two counts. Bailey Boswell pled not guilty to all three charges against her, not really surprising. While the couple was awaiting their trials, the authorities found coded messages the couple had been exchanging in order to line up their stories. Trail insisted on taking all the blame, claiming it was important for Bailey to be painted as the victim. The couple was tried separately. Aubrey Trail was the first to stand trial in June 2019 for first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. In addition to the digital and forensic evidence, the prosecution also had witness testimonies from 3 women who were ordered to remain anonymous. The women, all in their early 20s, testified that they had first met Bailey Boswell through Tinder, and that later Bailey introduced them to Aubrey, who she described as her boyfriend and sugar daddy. The women described being given manicures, expensive clothing, cell phones, drugs, and weekly allowances of $150 to $200. In exchange, they were to engage in group sex with Bailey and Aubrey, who they had to refer to as mommy and daddy. They also were expected to assist the couple with their scams and fence stolen property. As time went on, the rules of the relationships became more controlling. They couldn't be with other men, had to ask permission to do anything, were locked inside the couple's home or a motel room, and had to check in through text or phone every 3 hours. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous. And abuse tactic. The woman stated that it was only the beginning. They testified that Aubrey Trail described himself as a vampire, and they were his witches that belonged to his cult. They said he claimed to have supernatural powers like being able to fly and read minds. Aubrey Trail told them that they needed to torture and kill someone in order to gain more power, and if he could film it, he could sell the footage for $1 million, then split the money equally among them. He even suggested who they take as victims. The woman said they left the cult by November 2017 before Bailey Boswell lured Sydney Loof in. One of the women said Bailey had called her a month later after Sydney's murder and convinced her to travel with them to a casino. While there, she claimed to have gotten a weird vibe from them at the time, and when she saw that the Lincoln police were trying to contact the couple, she soon left. Though all 3 women said Aubrey spoke frequently about killing and dismembering someone, none of the women said they had witnessed Bailey Boswell or Aubrey Trail kill anyone. The trial did take a bizarre detour. When one of the witnesses was taking the stand, Aubrey Trail stood up in court, screamed Bailey was innocent. "I curse you all," and slit his throat with his improvised blade that he created in prison. He was immediately taken out of the courtroom and into an ambulance. Aubrey Trail did survive, and his trial continued. Once back in the courtroom, Trill announced that there was no video, there was no sexual fantasy, and there was no two other people in the room, which they already knew. He maintained that he had only accidentally murdered Sydney and used people for money and sex. Killing someone was counterproductive, he stated. The trial lasted 3 weeks, during which time Aubrey Trill suffered 2 heart attacks and a stroke, most likely from the stress. By the end, the jury had returned with a verdict of guilty on all counts, and on June 9th, 2021, Aubrey Trill was sentenced to death. He's still on death row, if you're wondering. Bailey Boswell stood trial in September 2020, which was less dramatic. However, there was more physical evidence against her. DNA was found on the latex glove that was found with Sydney's remains. In October, she was found guilty on all 3 counts. Her sentencing hearing began July 1st, 2021, with her defense arguing that Bailey Boswell's past history of sexual and physical abuse made her the perfect victim of Aubrey Trill, and that she should not receive the death penalty. On the final day of her sentencing hearing, Boswell tearfully begged the court not to sentence her to death for the sake of her daughter. Bailey Boswell was sentenced to life in prison in November 21, avoiding becoming the first woman ever to be sent to Nebraska's death row. So, what are your thoughts on this case? Do you agree with the court's decision of these two? I'll admit this was a bizarre case and one I wasn't expecting to read, especially the whole vampire part. After reading that Boswell had a daughter, I originally didn't believe it because it seemed like a sympathy ploy to tug at the heartstrings of the jury. However, Boswell actually does have a daughter, who is roughly 8 years old right now. As of this moment, I should say. Let me know all your thoughts on this one below in the comments. I'll, of course, leave links in the description for those of you who want to know more about this case and the grisly details. I think this is really tragic and just a more, I guess, cautionary tale of being more careful with dating apps, because you never know. And part of me wonders if Sydney was sexually assaulted. Just because, if you think about it, even the women that testified against Aubrey and Bailey, they took to Tinder, met Bailey, who was a woman. They were women, thinking that they were dating just a woman, and this woman lures them to meet her boyfriend, and then basically coerces them into being with her boyfriend. What if they were lesbians? Same with Sydney. What if she was a lesbian? And you have her meet this guy, and I don't know. I wonder if it really was consensual. I feel so bad for her. 100%. It's no way to go. And it's really sad and heartbreaking that this happened to her. I hate cases like this. They really tug at the heartstrings for me and make me angry at the perpetrators. Really angry. And I honestly wish for a harsher penalty, because their last moments, the victim's last moments, were fear and pain, while the perpetrators get to live. Yeah, they may live with guilt, maybe. Not always. A lot of times they don't, but sometimes they do. but they don't have that same feeling as their victims. And that's what bothers me. Let me know all of your thoughts. Next week, I'll be finishing up Killer Couples with a real doozy regarding an entire family of serial killers. They killed 30 people, roughly. It actually happened in Russia. March, we might move on to a different true crime topic, one that I've been kind of curious about understanding since college when I was taking crime classes, criminal justice classes, I should say. But don't count me on it. If there's a case, movie, or game you'd like me to check out, let me know in the comments. Or if there's something strange or weird in terms of like cryptozoology or just some weird thing that you heard about but don't know much about, or mythology, let me know as well. I'll look into it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so much for the new subscribers and the feedback. I do appreciate the feedback. I do read it. I try not to do like an info dump, and that's why I kind of try to break up the harsh stuff with a little kind of joke or something to try and alleviate the tension, but I know it's not always the right thing to do with cases, and it can kind of come off as not feeling like I'm taking it seriously. So that's why we're gonna just keep going with how this is going forward. So I hope you have a great weekend. Take care until next time, and thank you so much. Bye, everyone.